I'm going to show you how to design this basic popper so that you can go out and catch really cool fish like this one. Let's start in a brand new file. So the very first thing I'm going to do is create a var set for things that I will be using in the model more than once. And I just need a couple of properties here. Pilot hole diameter. This is where we're going to put screws when we print this guy out. Set that to 1.4. Add one more called front lure height and make that 14 millimeters. I like to create my var set first so it's up at the top of my file, be able to go back and change values or add new variables. So let's go ahead and create the side profile of our lure first. To do that, create a sketch, go with the YZ plane, which is the side plane, and we're going to begin creating the general outline of our lure here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come up and toggle construction geometry here and create a vertical line. And I want that vertical line to be symmetric to that horizontal axis. So I'm going to select both points in the axis and hit the S key. And then I'm going to dimension that with the D key and make that 9.5 millimeters. I'm going to create another construction line, and I'm going to make this line 75 millimeters long. This is going to be the length of our lure. And then I'm going to take these 2 points. Let's get out of the tool, select that point, and I'm going to put them in line with each other. And I'm going to set the distance of this line here, which is going to be half of our lure height. Okay, so I'm going to set that to 8 millimeters for a total lure height of 16. Now that we've got that done, let's go and get out of construction geometry and create a B-spline so that we have a nice curve to our lure. We'll drop the first point on the back of the lure there, drop another point up here somewhere, and then complete it on the axis. And then I'll hit my right mouse key to get rid of the tool. Let's do that one more time down here, back of the lure, down here somewhere, and on the axis somewhere. Right mouse key. Okay, so let's dimension this here. Let me zoom in a little bit. And let's first make it symmetric by choosing both of these control points and the origin and hitting the S key. And then let's dimension those 2 control points. D, to select those 2 points. And then here we're going to use the expression from the var set. This is our front lure height. So we're going to type varset.front lure height. That's going to set it to 14. Okay, we're getting pretty close. We need to make things symmetrical, at least for this design. I'd like them symmetrical. So I'm going to go back to the construction geometry and I'm going to drop a line that connects these 2 control points. And select that line, and I'm going to make it vertical. Use the V key for that. Then I'm going to select the control points and the axis and make them symmetrical so that it follows like this. You're getting some annoying notifications. We can ignore those. So to set this dimension to be just how I want it, I need one more construction point. So let's take a point and drop it on this line. And then let's highlight the point and this bottom B-spline, hit the C for a coincident constraint to put it on that line. And then let's do that one more time with the bottom construction line. Let's drop it there. Okay, now we've set it so that our max width, oops, we have a little problem with the front of the lure. Let me fix that. We lost our point on line constraint when we did symmetry. Sometimes that happens. You just zoom in and grab that control point, click the axis and put it back on the axis. There we go. The only thing we need to do here is decide where we want this curve. And since I previously had designed this, I already know that I would like to set this control point back 28 millimeters from the origin. And that gives us a nice curve. We can close the sketch now and go to the right view and see there our side profile for the lure. Let's go ahead and rename that now to side profile. Now for the tool I'm going to use to create the three-dimensional shape of this lure, we also need a top profile. And because I'm creating just a simple curved tube here, the way I can do that is by copying this sketch. So if I hit Control-C and deselect the var set because I don't want a copy of that, and Control-V, and rename this sketch to the top profile, I have the right shape, but it's not on the right plane. To fix that, we'll go to the sketcher. And we will choose the tool that says Reorient Sketch and reorient this sketch to the XY plane. And it's just going to bring up a preview, and that's fine. I can close it. Now we're almost correct here, except that that sketch isn't going the direction we want, and we need to rotate it. So to fix that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here to the Properties area, and I'm going to, in the Data tab already, I'm going to go to Placement, and I'm going to go to this angle and just change it to 90 degrees. And that should put that right where it needs to be. Okay, so now we have the outline of our lure, and because they're the same, it might be a little hard to tell. Let me go to a right view here. So here's the direct side view of the lure, and then as you kind of move it around, there's the more or less the direct top view. Let's create one more thing, which is our profile, our front profile of this lure. And to do that, I'm just going to drop a simple circle. So if we go back to the part workbench and we choose the Create Primitives dialog, we can get a circle from here. And I'll just say Create and close that dialog. Now, I want this circle to be oriented with the front of the bait, so I'm going to need to move it. I can do that with these properties down here, or I can just use the transform tool. So why don't I right click and transform? And I've got a rotation increment set of 30 degrees here, and I want to rotate around this red axis here. So I'm just going to grab it and move it 30, 60, 90 degrees and say okay. Now it's in the right spot, but it's not the right size. To fix that, we'll go down to the Data tab and the radius, and we will go to the expression editor there and change this to varset.front lure height. And now it'll match the front of our lure. Oops, it's too big, and that's because this is a radius and the value I entered was a diameter. Okay, that's good. Let's go back to our side view here, and let's go ahead and create the next part. Let's model this to look like a lure. We can create a bunch of loft profiles and create lofts between them, but there's a tool that makes this quite a bit easier. We're going to use something called the Curved Shapes Workbench. I already have it installed, but for you to get it, go to Tools, click on the Add-in Manager, and then in the search box, you're going to type Curved Shapes. And that's it there. Just go ahead and install that. FreeCAD is going to make you want to restart. Once you have the Curved Shapes Workbench installed, let's switch over to it. And now we're simply going to select these things in a certain order. First, we're going to select the circle or the front profile, and then the side and the top. And then we're going to use this curved array tool to create a curved array. And it doesn't look like much happened right at first. Sometimes it doesn't always refresh. But I want to show you a couple of things about how this tool works. So down here in the properties in the data, there's a property called items. And if I change that number of items, then it usually refreshes right away. And you can see what it's done is it's taken that circle and it's projected it along our side profile and our top profile. It's constrained that circle into that shape. Another property that we can play with here is we can make this a solid, and that's exactly what we want to do. So now we have the basic shape of our popper that follows those curves. If you ever wanted to change the curves that it was attached to, you go to this curved array in the Data tab, and you come down here to this whole curves, property. And then you could select different profiles. But we selected the correct ones from the very beginning. Now that we have our basic bait, let's create the popping lip. And in order to do that, I'm going to hide the curved array with a space bar. And I'm going to hide the top profile and the circle. And I'm going to go ahead and go back to either the part or the sketch or workbench. And I'm going to create another sketch. Oops, I don't want to attach it to anything. So let me deselect. So nothing's selected here. And I want to be on that YZ plane again, basically the side view. I'm going to bring in one piece of external geometry with this tool, which is the top point here. Then I'm going to come up here, I'm going to toggle out a construction geometry, and I'm going to drop a couple of lines. I'm going to drop one on this axis down to the origin, and from the origin over onto this axis. Now that I have those lines, I can dimension them. So I'm going to create a bit of a flat lip so that our curved popping lip doesn't come to a very sharp point here. And to do that, I'm going to hit the D key and dimension these 2 points to be just a 0.5 millimeter apart. And then this one is going to be the depth of our popping lip, and I'm going to make that 3 millimeters. I can get out of the line tool now in the dimension tool and come up here to create an arc by 3 points. And I'm going to drop 1 point on that line and 1 point on that line. And then I'm just going to angle my arc. And the last thing I need to do is we're going to revolve this around an axis. So I need for this shape to be a perfect half circle, or a perfect, is it a quarter circle? In any case, I'm going to take this center point of the arc, I'm going to select it and this horizontal axis and use a coincident constraint. And now our sketch is fully constrained. So if I close out of here, I can rename this to Pop Lip Revolve Sketch. I'm going to go ahead and put that name on my clipboard. And then in the part workbench still, I'm going to come up to here to this revolve tool. I'm going to select a reference and then select this part of that arc, or that straight line, and say OK. And when I do that, I get that nice revolved circular spherical shape that I want to cut out of the bait. So let's go ahead and rename this now. And I put that name on my clipboard, so I'm just going to pull the sketch off the back of the name and call it Pop Lip Revolve. And now we can take the curved array, have it selected first, then Control click on the Pop Lip Revolve and cut it. And when we do that, we have our lip. So we're looking pretty good here. Let's go back to the file I showed at the beginning and see what's next. So we have the basic shape of the bait, including the pop lip, but we need a couple more features. We need holes to attach screws so that we can tie the bait on our line and attach treble hooks. And I'd also like to create an eye socket, which is a place for me to glue some 3D stick-on eyes. So let's go back to our file and do those operations now. With nothing selected, I'm going to create yet another sketch on the YZ plane or the side view. And I need to hide this bait. So I'm going to go back to the model and click on the cut and just hit the space bar and hide it. And we have the side view visible, but I would also like to get the pop lip revolve. And that's because I need a point from there. So let's bring in some external geometry from that pop lip. Let's grab the back of that, and let's grab the bottom of the bait. Now that we have our external geometry, we can just drop 3 simple lines. We're going to drop one line where that pop lip ends. We're going to drop one line on the bottom of the bait coming straight up. And we're going to drop one line in the center of the back, which just happens to be this axis. And you'll notice that the back of this line can go anywhere. So let's go ahead and constrain it by clicking both of these points and hitting either the A or V key to set them in line. Then I'm going to take any one of these lines. I'll just use the front line and use the dimension tool. And here I'm going to make this 10 millimeters long. And that's because that is the thread length of the screw that I use. I like to use screws when I print my baits just because it's very fast and easy. I will put a link below in the description of the video to exactly which screw model I use. Now that we have one dimension, let's go ahead and highlight all three lines and hit the equal constraint so that they're the same size. I use the E key, but you could also use the equal constraint up here on the toolbar. Now things are mostly constrained. If you look at our task view, we have 1 degree of freedom, and that's this line here. I need to set this somewhere, and I am going to set this back from the front to be 28 millimeters. And we're fully constrained, so I can close out of here now. Let's rename this to rigging sketch. And then we're going to map to it, and these points are awfully small in the 3D view here, or the model view. So I'm going to come down here to the Properties tab, and I'm going to choose the View tab. And I'm going to go down here and find Point Size, which is under Object Style. And I'm going to change that to 10. I'm going to make those points really large so I can easily grab them later. And let's go ahead and hide our Pop Lip Revolve and our Side Profile. In order to drill holes in this bait, I'm just going to use simple cylinders. So I'm going to drop one cylinder down, and I'm going to set its properties before I make copies of it. For the radius, I use that expression editor, and let's go varset.pilot hole diameter, but it's a diameter, so we'll divide it by 2. And then for the height, I said that my threads were 10 millimeters long, but sometimes if you don't cut a little farther out of the bait, you don't get a clean cut. So I'm going to make this 11. I'm going to make them 1 millimeter longer than I need. So now that I have the property set, I'm going to go ahead and copy that cylinder, deselect the var set because I don't need that, and paste it twice. And then I'm going to get to renaming them. Front rig hole, mid rig hole. Oops, hit the wrong hotkey. Okay, I have my UI reset. Let's go back and rename this rear rig hole. Now the next thing I'm going to do is hide all these cylinders because that will make mapping them easier. I'm going to select the first cylinder, come down here in the Properties to the Data tab, and we're going to find this Map Mode attachment and click on the 3 dots. I'm going to choose the dot and the line, and then I'm going to say Align by OZX and say OK. Now if I bring that visible again, well, we'll notice that the cylinders go in the wrong direction. Let's show the side profile so you can see that. So in order to fix that, all we have to do is come down here to Map Reverse and say True. Let's go ahead and map the mid and rear now. Again, Map Mode, 3 dots, Point, Line, OZX, Rear Rig Hole, 3 dots, Point, Line, OZX. Let's make sure they're going in the right direction. They are not. So let's fix it with Map Reversed. And now we have our rigging holes aligned where they need to be. Looks like I switched workbenches. All right, back in the part workbench, we're going to take these 3 rig holes and create a union, which names it Fusion in the tree view for some reason, and call this all rig holes. Now that we have the rig holes set up, we need to cut them from our bait. But in order to do that, I'm actually going to create a single object of all cuts so that I don't have a very nested tree view that makes it kind of hard to find things. So I'll take the rigging holes and the Pop Lip Revolve and I'll fuse those together. And then I will rename that to all body cuts. Then I'll rename this cut to body cuts. And I will edit its properties. So down here in the data tab, we are cutting, the base is the curved array, and we're cutting the revolve, the pop lip revolve off of the base. What I want to do is I want to click the 3 dots here. And instead of the pop lip revolve, I want to use all body cuts. And when I do that, I have a nice simple tree view here, and it'll cut my rig holes. And you can see that they're out of the body now. So the last thing to do is create the eye. In order to create the eye, the first thing we're going to do is place it horizontally and vertically. So let's go to, let's hide our rigging sketch and let's hide our bait. Let's bring back our side profile and let's drop another circle. And once again, we're going to have to transform this to make it go the direction we want. So if I right click and transform that, I want to go around this green axis. And then I will set the radius here. And for that, I'm going to use 3¼ millimeters. The reason I'm doing that is I will attach a 6 millimeter stick-on eye to this bait, and I want a 0.5 millimeter clearance all around that so that it'll easily fit into the lure. So let's transform this again, and I want to leave this right on the center line, but I want to move it back a little bit. Just in a place that looks good for an eye for a bait, and say okay. Then we'll bring the main bait back and transform this circle one more time, but this time we're just going to pull it straight out. And we're going to pull it out until it pretty much just disappears into the lure. Now let's rename this circle eye placement. Now we're going to do it in extrude, and I want to cut a 0.5 millimeter deep. So I will do 0.5 millimeters on the extrude. And if you notice, it's going the wrong direction. It's coming out and I want it to go in. So let's go to the extrude, down to the data tab, and reverse the extrusion. And we can't really see it, and that's fine. We're going to cut it in a minute. But it's not going to be a clean cut because of these little tiny pieces that are showing here. So I'm going to extrude that same circle one more time. And this time say like 3 millimeters. And I will fuse those two things together and just rename this to left eye. And in order to get that eye on both sides of the bait, now I'm going to mirror it. So with the left eye selected, I will come up here to this mirror tool. And I want to mirror it against that YZ or side plane and say okay. And now that I've done that, we have that piece over there. An important thing to note about mirrors is that I can change this left eye and the mirror will follow, but this mirror is actually a separate object. So I'm going to fuse the mirror and the original together and just rename this to both eyes. And now that I have that, I can cut it from the body. And all I have to do is go to this all body cuts fusion, go to the shapes, hit the 3 dots, and add both eyes to that fusion and say okay. And when I do that, and when it refreshes, which may take a second, those eyes will come out. Let's go ahead and hit the refresh button. There we go. So there we have it. We've created a simple popper with rigging holes so we can screw in hooks and tie it to our line. We've got an eye socket where we can glue some 3D eyes. And that is it for this design video. I will probably use this popper to show some more techniques in future design videos. Thanks for watching this one. Leave a thumbs up or a comment if you have any questions, and we'll be sure to get right back to you. Thanks.